Hello, welcome to Press TV's News Analysis. I'm Marzia Hashimi. Thank you so much for being with us. Well, the old saying that charity begins at home seems to be an unfamiliar saying to politicians in Washington. As the U.S. government continues to demand cuts and are subjecting the American people to austerity measures, the average American might be surprised to know that the United States continues to increase its aid to Israel. The U.S. is now providing Israel with at least $8.2 million every day.
Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has thanked the U.S. for approving military aid to Tel Aviv. He has admired the move as America's unshakable commitment to Israel. This comes just a day after the U.S. Congress approved over $200 million in aid to Israel. Israel has been the largest recipient of U.S. aid since World War II. Despite its budget deficit, the U.S. is believed to be spending more on its military than any other country in the world. According to a report by the Independent International Institute of SIPRI, Washington's military spending is now at an all-time high, with a rise of more than 80% since 2001. Reports say U.S. military spending now stands at around $700 billion. Washington's growing military spending has drawn massive public protests at home. Americans say the U.S. military policies are taking their toll on the citizens. The protesters came to the streets in several cities on tax day and said that the wars have brought nothing for Americans but the coffins of their beloved ones.
My feeling is that we're losing a lot of our men, our young men, in the war, and it's very sad.
It's fair to say I'd like to see the money go to some other cause.
The Obama administration has recently announced a rise in taxes to trim the budget deficit and cut the huge debts incurred over the wars. Now, with the White House's new approval of military aid to Israel, Americans wonder how they will benefit from the relationship between Tel Aviv and Washington amid tax hikes and rising unemployment.
Well, I'd like to welcome my guests to the program. First of all, turning to London, where we have Professor of Binary Economics, Mr. Rodney Shakespeare. And in Gaza, Professor of Islamic University of Gaza, Dr. Hani al-Bassous. And from Berkeley, California, author of Hidden History of Zionism, Mr. Ralph Showman. Thank you all for being with us. Well, I'd like to start off in London with Professor Shakespeare. Now, with the most recent military aid package that's been increased to $3 billion, just passed by Obama and the House and Senate Appropriations Committee in the United States. The question, I guess, first of all, to ask is why, with the situation that is facing the United States, the economic situation and the tough times that the American people are going through, is it necessary for the United States to give this type of aid to Israel?
Well, the United States wishes Israel to continue its war crimes. Only in the last week, Israel and the United States have been plotting together to try and hide the fact that Israel sprays phosphorus all over civilian populations. And that's what the $3 billion is for, to maintain war crimes. And the American foreign policy is ultimately about maintaining the commission of war crimes by Israel.
Okay, well, let me turn to Gaza, actually, and get Dr. Bassous in on this. Now, Dr. Bassous, you're sitting in Gaza, and Gaza has definitely seen its crimes committed by Israel on the people of Gaza. What's your take of this situation, this much money that is being spent by the Americans and giving to the Israelis? Would Israel be able to survive without the support of the United States, in your perspective?
Well, I believe the commitment which was made by the United States to the state of Israel by sending them money on an annual basis and the commitment which was made just today by the Congress. I think this is all be to the Israeli side to make them more stronger, to commit more crimes against the Palestinian people. We have witnessed for the past 2 or 3 years how many times the Gaza Strip has been attacked, and the money which has been pledged by the Congress, over $200 million. I think this money will be given to the Israeli side to buy more arms, more weapons, to launch more attacks against the people in the Gaza Strip. This money was given to the Israeli side specifically to buy 4 batteries of missiles to launch more attacks against the Palestinian people in Gaza. People in Gaza believe for the past many years that the American side has pledged more money, more support to the Israeli side to commit more crimes against the Palestinian people. We have witnessed that the Israeli side has been above the international law, and the International Court of Justice hasn't been prosecuting any of the leaders of the Israeli side. Such commitment from the American side to the Zionist entity give them a more free hand to commit more crimes against the people of the Gaza Strip, specifically here, and to buy more tanks, more airplanes, to launch more attacks against civilians in Gaza. And this comes amid the warning by the Israeli military leaders and political officials who have the pledge to commit the crimes against the Gaza Strip. And some of them has, for the past few days, were saying that they're going to commit an attack against the Gaza Strip if the Palestinian people do not stop launching homemade rockets. I think these threats and warnings to the Palestinian community and to the Palestinian political factions by the Israeli side was supported mainly by the United States administration.
Okay.
What's happening today in the USA, it's completely unfair and unjust for the Palestinian people.
All right, let me turn to Mr. Showman in Berkeley, California. Well, Mr. Showman, the United States government would say that it is in the interest of its country to support the Israelis. How do you see this?
You know, I've tried to discuss this at length in my book, The Hidden History of Zionism, and later in a report that my wife and I prepared for the United Nations on the treatment of Palestinian prisoners in 3 jurisdictions called Prisoners of Israel. And in these documents, we assessed the extent to which the subsidization of the Zionist state has been an integral part of the projected program of imperialism for the region from the inception of the Zionist movement, not just the formation of the state itself. The actual subsidy is approximately $6 billion a year. Over a space of 60 years, it's $360 billion, but even that doesn't begin to tell the story. The Washington Report on Middle Eastern Affairs, for example, documented in a discussion called Israel's Untouchable Entitlement Programs that much of the funding that goes to the Israeli state is off the books. It does not include billions of, quote, drawdown of U.S. weapons from Europe and their transfer to Israel, the creation of U.S. weapons stockpile in Israel, the contributions of fuel tanks and oil to fill them. And then it goes on to indicate that there are billions as well in experimental weapons that are jointly manufactured by Pentagon and Israeli military operations within the state. The IMI, the Israel Military Industries Incorporated, was actually formed in 1933 and was integrated with the plan that was being developed at the time in the United States by the U.S. ruling class to find a way to extricate the capitalist structure from the Great Depression. The second term of Franklin Roosevelt did this by turning people into working for what we call the merchants of death, so that military production and waste production became the principal anvil of capitalist operations over the next many decades. In a space of 4 decades, $10 trillion was assigned to the Pentagon on the books, let alone off the books. That's more than double the value of everything produced together in the United States combined. So to understand the dependence of capitalism on waste and military production, the root of capitalism and imperialism is to see the necessity of the shock troops of the Zionist state to the imperial projections for control of resources, throughout the Arab East and the region at large. Much of this weaponry, of course, is extremely experimental. I don't only speak of the cluster bombs that were developed to proficiency by the United States in Vietnam, with Moshe Dayan closely consulting in that process, but they were used throughout the region. I'm talking about cluster bombs disguised as toy bombs, as telephones. When Maya and I were living in the Palestinian camps in Lebanon during the invasion of 1982, everywhere you went, you found these little toys disguised as telephones or pens or little playthings, and they were in fact condensed canisters of razor-sharp slivers of steel that fly out in all directions.
Now, Mr.
These
Shulman, you're giving us a lot of
all over the region.
Now, Mr. Shulman, with a lot of the information that you're giving us, would you admit that the average American does not have a clue to the things that you're saying, that they would be extremely surprised that their tax dollars are going to do these type of things that you have given examples of?